Yeah, hey Rob, good to see you after the 10-month layoff here. Hey, I wanted to ask you. Obviously, you've got 42 kids in camp. They're all some adults too, but you've also got a number of guys at the World Juniors. Are there guys that maybe aren't going to be in camp here at the outset that you are looking at as possibly having a shot to make the roster?
Well, obviously those kids at the World Juniors, we'll make a decision on bringing them back once we see how they do on their teams. A lot has to do with the leagues they're currently in. Some are paused, some haven't started, so there's a different availability to them. I would say off of the current list of 36 forwards, two names that aren't on there due to injury are Holtz and Sodergran, and they didn't. Holtz recovering from hip surgery, and Sodergren had hurt his back in Europe when he was playing over there. So they're injured, so they weren't currently on that 36-man roster that we put out today.
All right. Next is going to be Lisa Dillman. Lisa?
Yeah, hi, Rob. On the list of players, will everybody be good to go tomorrow, or do some people have to continue their quarantine? I know Andreas is probably one of those guys.
Andreas will be the only one that has to go through the quarantine process currently. He arrived, Monday night, and our protocol right now is 8 days with 4 negative tests during that 8 days, and then you can enter into the facility. So he's currently, I think he tested yesterday for the first time.
If I could follow up on the quarantine issue, some of the junior players that might come to join you hypothetically, would they have to go through 8 days, or is there a way to shortcut that process?
We're looking at different options because they are coming from a bubble situation, being tested every day. There's a possibility they can be brought back in depending on how they travel from the World Juniors to here. So we're discussing that with the league and with the health officials. A lot of it's directed by the county health, and but it's a little different situation, like I said, because they are currently in a bubble being tested every day, and they'd be brought into a protocol where we'll be doing regular testing as of tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
All right. Next up, Helene Elliott.
Unmute. Hello?
Hey. Yep.
Okay. Question has partly been answered, but I was trying to figure out, is everybody in town who's supposed to be in town? And also just looking at the NBA, I mean, 2 days into their season, they had to postpone a game because of COVID-related issues. Are you anticipating that's going to happen in the NHL? I mean, it's probably no way around it, really.
Right. I think you have to be aware of it possibly happening. Like I said, just the first part of that, yes, everybody that is on our roster now has cleared protocol. The majority of them skated yesterday and today. So everybody's in that, but you have to, I think you have to be reasonable and expect that sometime it will creep in. We're going to do the best we can. Chris Kingsley and along with our doctors and the NHL protocol itself is very intense, and the education process is real good between the union and the NHL, educating the players of the risk. And I firmly believe no player wants to be a result of spreading this quickly or having to shut something down. So they're being very aware. But if you do look at the other sports and particularly football and basketball, it does creep in, and you have to be aware of that.
All right. Next up is John Hoven.
Hey, Rob, I know the list came out today regarding who's actually going to be in camp, but the real question, I guess, would be for Bild and Kaliev. Is there any clarity at all yet about where they can be assigned, especially with the OHL sort of in limbo? Because you're going to have a couple weeks there where there might not be a place to put them.
Right. I think, what we're exploring and kind of the understanding we have right now, especially with the leagues that haven't started, not so much the one on pause being the Quebec League, I'm talking mostly CHL here, and those two being from the OHL. Most likely we can bring them, and whether or not the American League is participating in training camp by then, you have the availability of that, or the taxi squad, until the OHL or CHL, WHL, whatever league there formally announces their return to play.
Is the plan to start the AHL camp immediately when the NHL season starts so that those guys can be released? The other players, I should say, will be released to camp?
Yeah, they're ongoing conversations right now with the American League on proposed schedule, start dates, and that. They have calls again tomorrow and the next day. So it hasn't been completely aligned to us or explained to us when training camp could start for the American League. So we're going to wait and see on that, but I think it will coincide with them returning from the World Juniors, whatever protocol it is to get back into our facility here, and then whether it's American League or taxi squad, we'll figure that out.
Thank you.
All right, Dan Greenspan.
Hey, Rob, thanks for doing this. Given the unusual nature of this season, what defines success or progress in terms of the development of these young players?
What defines success or progress? Well, I think at the first and foremost, and we had our meeting today with the introduction meeting with the players in the training camp, and Todd spoke, and he spoke about a foundation and a process that was fully engraved last year as the season went on, and now it's time to reinforce that and build on it. So I think we have that in order. Like you said, it's a little different schedule now, and different rosters with the taxi squad and where you can place players and the movement there to acquire the development. We're waiting on the American League to get the final schedule to see what kind of game schedule, training camp schedule they'll have, so that we know these players will be in a position where they can continue to develop. We've been fortunate to be able to operate in phase 2 of the NHL protocol for a number of weeks, months leading up to this. And our development staff's been hard at work already continuing that development of these young players, and just watching the bodies mature in this time. It'll be nice to get them on the ice and see where they're at.
Thanks.
All right, Dennis Bernstein.
Hey, Rob. You haven't made many changes to the roster in the offseason.
No.
Multiple teams are over the salary cap. If you were approached hypothetically, like Dorian was approaching, in Ottawa, getting a deal for multiple assets, utilizing some of your cap space, is that something you'd explore at this point?
Yeah, and we've looked at different options there, and that we do have that availability of cap space. And we've looked at different options there. It's just another way to acquire an asset if things would work. Yes.
And just to follow up, any update? Outside follows unrestricted to the end of the season. Any update on the contract situation with Alex?
No, we haven't really got in any discussions with him on that yet. We like Alex. We obviously like his progress here the last few years, and feel he's becoming the that leadership group moving forward with our team. So, I envision those talks going as the season gets going. We really didn't before. We weren't sure what was going on with the season length and all that kind of thing. So now getting that in order, we fully, explore that as we get going here.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, next up is Ryan Kennedy.
Hi, Rob. Just curious what your thoughts are on Quentin Byfield's play so far at the World Juniors. It's basically the first real action he's had since you drafted him.
Yeah. And if you look, all these kids, a majority of the kids playing in that tournament, they've got 3 tournament games in the last 8 or 9 months. So there's a level of progress, and then understanding the pressure these kids are under on a day-to-day basis and everything. He had a big game yesterday, which was really nice to see. I think his work and trying to do the right things and being in the right positions has been there from day one. So, we've been pleased with all our prospects' progress at this tournament. It's nice to see them play in a very competitive situation again.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Zach Dooley.
Hey Rob, the Athanasiou signing, what have you seen from his game? What do you think he can bring to the group, and what led to you guys deciding to bring him in on a one-year deal?
Yeah, we've been in discussions a little bit for the past month, a month and a half. Obviously trying to sort out rosters and different things. I think obviously the number one thing with the speed and the goal scoring ability wasn't as great a year last year. The year before, he put up a lot of goals. The ability to play both wings, but a guy that's played some games in the NHL also. So, once we knew the rosters, what you could carry and what you could carry on your taxi squad, and that I think it makes a competitive group of young forwards that are vying for jobs here.
And one more for you. When you look at the World Junior Tournament from a scouting point of view, do you put any added emphasis on that with your group, considering, the less frequent opportunities to look at these young players?
We do. I mean, for the most part, it's peer on peer evaluation and the best of each country. So, the competitiveness of that and everything. But some of these kids, you're going to want time to see them in your own organization, and you're going to want time in the development system. And that they're, like I said, they're young guys, but it's real nice to see them in that competitive environment going against the best of their age.
Great, thank you.
Next up is Lee Hamilton.
Hi, Rob. Lee Hamilton down in San Diego. Nice to chat with you. Hey, has there been any in-depth discussion with the American League about, with the OHL not starting, Quebec suspended, nobody knows about the Western League, taking a Byfield and allowing him maybe in an age exemption waiver to go to Ontario or the other NHL teams in the AHL to send their underage kids down here to start? Or would you be better served to keep them with a taxi squad and just train them and work with them until the OHL gets started?
Well, right now, I think you have that option of both. Currently, why the OHL isn't up and running. So we'll have to, understand better the start dates on the American League and that. Obviously, the league will direct what will happen if, for some reason, the CHL did not continue this year, where you could place those junior age players. So we're kind of waiting and seeing with the idea that we would be bringing them in here for at least a few weeks to get a little bit of a camp feel and be around the NHL players and with us being real fortunate with having Ontario and LA play out of the same building here.
Also, as a follow-up, will you be allowed to have free movement from the AHL team back to the NHL team, or would you just keep the top 4 Ontario guys with the big club and just let them practice and then move them in when you have to?
Well, you'll be able to have movement from AHL to taxi squad and obviously taxi squad, including the rosters and that, but it all is subject to local health quarantine process. So, with both teams playing out of the same building, if both teams are home and both are doing the frequent testing, the daily testing, it hasn't been decided yet what the total protocol will be. But again, all that movement, no matter where your American League team is, between that and the taxi squad is subject to local health, designation of the protocol.
Are the Reign going to play home games at Staples Center?
No, I think they're planning on playing out of a sports center here, Toyota Sports Performance Center.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Jack Harris.
Hey, Rob, as you get training camp underway, in your view, how many of the roster spots, how much of the roster is still going to be up for grabs in these next couple of weeks? And is it harder to evaluate these guys, especially maybe the guys without NHL experience in a condensed split up camp like this?
Not so much. I mean, I think our schedule, Todd, look there, we're going to have inter squad the first 3 days here. And then there'll probably be a day off, and then you're going to break into 2 groups, most likely coming out of that. So, the early competition, when you're looking, the availability to carry 23 players on your NHL roster, then the taxi squad, there's a lot of movement between younger players, players that aren't fully established with 2 or 3 years in the NHL. We have a lot of that movement going on there. So I feel there'll be a strong competition for different players at spots there.
Do you anticipate adding anybody else in these next couple of weeks who might factor into the NHL plans for this year? Or are you guys pretty much set personnel wise?
Well, I think we're pretty much, I mean, we got 36 in our camp now. We'll make an adjustment with when Andreas is cleared protocol to bring him in. So, you know, and, you know, when you look at total contracts and you kind of look where we are, I think we're pretty well set for now.
Next up is Joe Reedy.
Rob, with this training camp in a condensed time frame, is it almost similar to coming out of a lockout as far as preparing your guys? And just with the teams that didn't make the playoffs, how much of a challenge is it with the amount of time you haven't played?
Well, I think everybody at this time now, you know, we've had an extended period of time off, but everybody's been long enough that, you know, they're pretty much in the same boat when they come back. We get a couple extra days here that you get a coach on there and get a little structure. The 2 week, basically 2 week camp with no exhibition is much different for a lot of players. You know, they're never usually in that situation. So you're going to get through that very quick. And then you're going to be thrown right into game situations. So, you know, like I said, a lot of everything that, you know, whether it's camp and the scheduling and how we're playing in the division and our travel, everything is different for the players, and they're going to have to adjust on the fly. But it will come fast, and you know, these next 2 weeks are going to go quick, and then you'll be right into real games.
All right, back to Andrew Knoll.
Yeah, hi, Rob. So I want to get your thoughts a little bit on the realignment and the schedule. I know last year there was a lot of guys in the coaching staff who didn't like kind of the imbalance. You guys had a real long homestand, a couple real long road trips. It does seem a little bit more balanced this year. So I want to know, you know, if you were encouraged by that. Also, with the Canadian teams coming out, some really formidable teams coming in. Just your thoughts kind of on the shifting pieces inside the division and also the exclusively interdivisional play.
Yeah, no, that's different. Like I said, you know, you're going to see a lot of these teams over and over. You know, when you look at the schedule, I think we start with a 4-game trip, a 6-game trip, then we have another 4, and then it's 2-game trips. So, but the difference being you're in the city for those 2 games, which rarely ever happened before. So that part will be different for all the teams. You know, like we told the guys today, listen, everything's going to be a little bit off, and we don't really control those situations. So whatever they throw at you, be prepared for it. You know, I think the players are looking at different scheduling here and seeing spending the 2 or 3 days at a time in a certain city. And you know, I think they're going to enjoy that part of the schedule.
I just wanted to follow up. Is that affecting the way that you and Todd, or maybe and Bill too, are maybe looking at the goalie situation? I mean, how are you considering maybe dividing up the starts? I mean, I know it's, you know, preliminary at this point, but you know, any impact as far as the schedule or, you know, the dynamic of where the 2 guys are at? What are you guys thinking as far as how you're going to manage your goalies in the early part of the year?
Yeah, I mean, Todd, that's probably a better question suited for Todd. We obviously know our 2 goalies here, and the option, or not the option this year, mandated carrying 3 goalies throughout. You know, just in case of different situations on the road. The schedule is, you know, condensed wise, it's not much different than we're used to. So again, Todd will balance the goaltender schedule as we go forward.
All right, back to Lisa Dillman.
Yeah, Rob, how much of a leg up do you think the likes of Carl and Samuel will have, having played a significant period of time in Sweden?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, obviously they get into a situation where they've had some structure, they have competition in their games and that. Now they've all had to, you know, probably within the last 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of these players have made their way over and been off for an extended period of time. But it does come back a little quicker because they haven't had the extended months off. So, you know, we've got a few players that had that availability to get that structure in those competitive games in here, which should help them as the camp goes on.
Now, a follow-up, Rasmus Kapari, has he been cleared for full contact, and has he been able to do pretty much everything?
Yeah, no, he's been cleared here. They just completed their medicals and physicals here the last couple days, and he was cleared probably before that, but officially cleared. Tyler Madden officially cleared after surgery on his finger from his time in Germany. So this extended time for Rasmus for sure. He did that right the World Juniors. I think it was in the play in the first. So that's almost a year to date.
And Jeff Carter?
Jeff's fine too. Yep. Jeff had that surgery early in the pause and the setback here, but he's fully cleared and ready to go.
Great, thank you.
And back to Helene.
Okay. Hi, I have two questions, please. First one is, I remember when the league was talking about the return to play, there was always the idea that the non-playoff teams would have at least a week more than the other teams would have. And obviously that's not happening. And I'm wondering your thoughts on that. And my second question is this the year, do you see this team making the playoffs this year? Is this the year you have to make the playoffs and continue the progression that you've begun?
Yeah, well, first question, yeah, we were applying and trying to get an extra week, similar to what they had at camp before they went to the playoffs and that, but obviously with the full understanding that, with the fluid situation with COVID and when you could get different health, we knew that was going to be shortened by the end of the time. So we'll take what we can get there. As far as playoffs, yeah, that's what we expect to do. I mean, we talked about today, it's a result-oriented business, and to get these results are wins, and you want to keep building on that. You need the foundation in place, and then you need the process that the players trust and buy into. And like I said, I think we developed that last year. Now we need to take that another step forward, but that is results, and you need wins to get that result.
Thank you.
Back to John Hoven.
Hey, Rob, without trying to get you to predict the future, is it safe to say, though, that the plan going into the season would be not to burn a year off the contracts of guys like Turcotte and Byfield and Kaliev, that even if they were able to get some NHL games, you'd want to keep them under that 7-game limit?
Yeah, and you're right, 7-game limit because of the prorated and the amount of games and everything. I mean, that's conscious every year. I think you want to make sure. I think at the end of the day for us, so it's we want to make sure when the players come, listen, we're talking about real young players, and they have to be 100% ready to step in and help your team win. Right. So the process before that, leading up to it, that all comes into play, and we'll take it as we go. We'll get a look at some of these guys early. We hope so. We got situations where you can carry them, and we may get a game here and there. But again, they have to be 100% ready, and we have to be confident that by playing the whole year, it's going to help them develop.
And then follow up to that would just be the Cal Clegg situation, where I think the plan coming in was to sort of rotate Clegg and Bjornfoot on the NHL roster. Does it give Clegg any sort of a leg up, being that he'll be participating in camp and getting a regular look here while Bjornfoot's still at the World Juniors?
Yeah, and I think Cale put himself in that position last year, getting a couple games with us during the season, and getting to see him availability. He can play both sides, and a little different style. He's a skating defenseman. He wants to move the puck in that. But yes, we want to get games, and we want to get a good look at him and get a good read where he would fit in on the roster.
Thank you.
And back to Jack Harris.
Rob, what are you expecting to see out of Elias Anderson this year?
It'd be interesting to see him live over here in our situation. We've had a lot of video, and obviously our scouting staff led by Christian Rutu in Europe, have a real good background with them and everything, but the competitiveness of them, and obviously a skill level to be drafted in that type of situation. So it will be nice to see him compete again against a lot of guys that we have in this age group. I would say 24 and under. There's a competitive spirit between them all, jockeying for positions.
And when you talk about the big picture plan and wanting to take a step forward, I mean, how much have you communicated that directly with the veteran guys you have left? And how much do you think it'll help just the fact that it doesn't seem like this is going to be a year where you're going to have a lot of different trade speculation and things like that have been around the last couple of years, that you've kind of been able to turn the roster over?
Well, I think you look, yeah. Listen, that's been communicated a lot with the veteran players. We understood the situations, the past two deadlines, and what it meant to our team, and what we were doing, and now I think when you look at that, you don't see that uncertainty as much at the deadline. All right, so we're going to start putting in some of these players, the competitiveness to try to earn spots in here, but. Like I said, the result-oriented business, trying to get the wins, pushing this team to get better and better. That's been communicated with the 5 veterans for a number of months throughout this. But I do think there's a little more certainty this team going forward when we approach deadlines.
All right, just a few more here. Next is Dennis Bernstein.
Rob, sticking with the veterans, Drew's had 2 tough seasons. Like your thoughts on him coming into the season? Is his mindset here? I mean, what do you expect from him this season?
We expect him to be the same, Drew. Be the leader on this team and be a real good player. I think we're going to surround him with some better defensemen. First and foremost, I think Ole Mata is going to help there. You saw Mikey Anderson. You mentioned Cale Clegg and McDermott. We saw the strides that Matt Roy and Sean Walker. So now you got a collective 6 or 7 defensemen that are. Puts a different level for him to bring his competitive nature, which he usually shines all the time. And that's his probably number one asset is how hard he competes. So the more we can surround him with better players throughout this lineup, so it gives that positive reinforcement that we're going to keep moving forward and taking a step instead of taking a step back at the deadline.
And Rob, just to follow up on the taxi squad, are you going to carry the complement full of 6? Will they travel on the road with the team?
Yeah, we have the ability. Obviously, you have to have 4 with you at all times, and then the availability of 6. I think it'll be a little bit fluid situation. Again, it's hard to give exact numbers until we see what the AHL schedule and training camp will look like. But the more we've done it in the back and the different mock-ups we've did with Todd and that, we're always around 5 or 6 on that taxi squad, and they would travel. They'll participate, 28, 29 skaters on the ice and practice throughout. So, a little different handling of players than we've seen in the past.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, Daryl Evans.
Yeah, hey, Rob, just a quick question. Without having the exhibition games this year, the preseason, is that going to change any way that you guys go about with the evaluating or making it more difficult for players to kind of play their way on a team?
Yeah, we always, I think the exhibition, especially when you're getting 6+ games and you're getting real good looks. Unfortunately, the younger players aren't going to have that situation. Todd remarked on that today to the group about the first 3 days of this, having the first 3 really inter squad games. And that's your only scrimmage. It's not as controlled with referees, and that just can't have that availability right now. So a little different process there, but I do think, you still have 2 weeks to compete every day in practice. And a lot of Todd's practice will be a controlled scrimmage or a controlled breakout where you'll see different situations that may arise in an exhibition. But again, a little different camp than we're used to because of that.
Thanks.
And back to Lee Hamilton.
What's the biggest question you need to get answered before you start playing for real? Is it just lock and load what's going to be around Doughty on the back end, or is it to find guys who can score goals in the 3rd and 4th line so Kopitar doesn't have to carry it?
Well, I think it's guys that score on the top 2 lines. I think our depth scoring might have been okay, at the end down the stretch there last year, but the overall goal scoring and ability to score. And so when I say we had a process and a system that players, you started to see the buy-in and the trust in that system as last year's season went on. So that's going to be reinforced now. And now you start putting some players that may be capable of scoring more if they're in the right situations in that system and get that buy-in. That's where we feel we're going to generate more offense or more goals is through that.
Thank you.
And last question here from Dan Greenspan.
Rob, as we've seen sports outside of the bubble, MLS, NFL, NBA, college football. We've seen mixed levels of success. What's your level of optimism that you'll be able to play this schedule as scheduled without any interruptions?
Excuse me. I sure hope so. What we've been able to see is that the NHL has been real diligent along with the PA at putting a very tight protocol in place, trying to keep the players as safe as possible. The buy-in from the staffs, the medical staffs and all the other staffs has been tremendous. The buy-in from the players, the testing daily, the rapid testing, what you do on your off time, the travel protocol, everything's been put into place to make it as safe as possible. We explained to our players, you have to do this. Like, we did the opening meeting today. We had to move it to an empty rink. We have a pond here. The smaller ice surface here was covered over. Chairs are 6 or 8 feet apart. Everybody's wearing masks. So everybody does their part to chip in to, like I said, to keep everybody as safe as possible and move forward. Now, can we do it? We're sure hopeful we can. We've, knock on wood, done a pretty good job over the last 2 months, and we're going to continue, but we're going to hold people accountable to make sure they're doing the right things.